Hello everyone, this is Pamela from Design Wishes by Pamela, here to share with you a project that I am making for the hashtag G45 off the page challenge for the month of February. For this project, I am using the Deluxe Collector's Edition of the Steampunk Debutante. Always say this, it's just because they're so consistent in their paper designs. This is an absolutely gorgeous paper collection from G45. I love the colors, I love the design, and I love the theme. So this is what I'm using. My off the page is using a guest tile holder, and in this video, I will show you in a time-lapse version how I did all of the distressing and coloring of this guest towel holder. The base of the original guest towel holder is here, right in here. This piece is a wood base that I've had for such a long time. It's a black wood base, and I'll show that a little later in the video, that I had my brother make for me for another project some years ago. But that's going to be the off the page part of this project for the G45 challenge. So let me go ahead and get started. I have chosen to use pieces of this sheet here. I'm actually using this element right here. I'm using this element right here. And let's see, I think I have, yes, this element here. And I may use these as a cut apart, and I'll be using this. So this mainly are the pieces in here that I'm using. I am also using this element right here. I cut it out, and you'll see that, and this element here on this paper sheet. And then I am going to be using this here as a fold out, these two pieces, and these two pieces as a fold out as well. And I may incorporate some of the other ones. I'm not sure if I am, but that's what I'm using. And let me show you what I have here, because essentially I'm going to be hanging the pockets and photo mats onto the guest towel holder with the hooks that you saw a little bit ago. So that is the image that I'm going to be using here, the cut apart here. There's that cut apart. And all I did was just trimmed around the borders here. Here is the fold out that I'm going to be making with this cut apart. I will be making pockets out of this one, a slide pocket out of this one, a little booklet out of this one, a pocket out of this one. And then I'm also going to do like a flip pocket a little later, and I'll show you that as I go through each of the pages. So let's go ahead and do the first one. I'm going to do this big one right here. So I'll set these aside. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to make a pocket out of here. And I've already cut my strips, but I want to give you some measurements for this part of it. Okay, to make the pocket for this page, you're going to need two strips cut at 3 1/4 by 4 1/2 and scored at 1/4 and 1/2 inch. You're going to score two pieces 3 1/4 by 4 1/2, and you're going to score them at 1/4 and 1/2. And then you're going to need one piece that's 3 1/4 by 4 3/8, and you're going to score that too at 1/4 and 1/2. And then you're going to burnish your score lines. And we're going to be making a pocket out of this small piece right here that is going to go on the back of this. So let me go ahead and just score and reinforce your score lines, because we're essentially going to make a 1/4 inch deep pocket. But we're gonna put these on the back side of this piece right here. Be careful that you don't tear your strips. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to angle my ends of my little wings that I'm making here, so that nothing is sticking up at the top of my piece that I'm going to adhere it to. So all I'm doing is just taking and trimming those edges off. That's all I'm doing. It's just trimming these edges. And you may not, really need to do it. But to keep it really clean, it's always a good idea to do it. You're not going to see it. It's going to be behind your main piece, but it just keeps everything nice and neat. Okay, clear that off. So then what you want to do is apply some adhesive using the longer pieces on each side. We're just going to adhere it up to that fold line, that 1/4 inch fold line. And then we're going to do the same thing to the bottom piece. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm using liquid glue. I just make a mixture of the Aleene's super tacky glue, and then I add a little bit of water to it to thin it out. That's just how I like using it. And let me just prep this a little bit. And so you want to go ahead and do that. You're going to line up your, and I'll show you in a minute. I just want to do this off camera here. You want to burnish. So all I did was I took and, let me line that up a little better. All I did was put adhesive on the 1/4 inch side of the strip of cardstock, and then I lined up my designer paper up to that very edge, not going over that score line. So let me apply some adhesive to this piece. Let me go ahead and do that, and then I'll show you on the other side. So there's my adhesive on that strip, and then I'm just going to line it up with that fold. Oops, wrong one. That's the bottom part. Let me put the bottom one on. I'm just going to line it up onto that fold, but not going over that fold. And then I'm going to burnish that down. I'm just going to burnish that down and make sure it's nice and adhered to. So then I'm going to do the side piece that goes on here. So I'm going to apply my adhesive. Again, you can use your red tape, score tape, or similar, or wet glue. I'm using wet glue. And you're going to line it up so that the edge of your designer paper is on the very edge of that fold line. And then you're going to want to press down and burnish. Take any glue off or adhesive. And so this is what the piece should look like. Okay? So that when we apply it onto the back of our designer paper, which is going to be our pocket base or our pocket backing, it is going to have a 1/4 inch little box. So that's what the back of it looks like. And then it will sit wherever you want it to place. You could do it center, you can do it off center. It's just totally up to you. And then we'll put some tags and things inside there. So the next thing I'm going to want to do is glue or apply adhesive on the 3 sides of the brown cardstock here. And then I'm going to adhere that down onto my paper. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. You just want to make sure you don't glue the inside of your designer paper, because then your little pocket box is going to be closed up and you don't want that to happen. So let me go ahead and apply some adhesive on here. All right. And I think I'm going to want to center my pocket. I'm going to center my pocket on the page, but a little down, so that I have about, I don't know, about a 1/4 of an inch around, almost. So I'm just going to center that on there so it's nice and straight. And then I'm going to take my bone folder and I'm going to go inside and I'm just going to press down on those inside 1/4 inch scored sides of our brown chipboard, or cardstock, excuse me, not chipboard, cardstock. And the kind of thing I like about liquid glue is you got a little bit of wiggle room to move your piece down so that it's straight and aligned. And you don't have to worry about like tearing up your paper if you don't get it straight, which I think I need to move this down a little bit. So let me go ahead and lift that up and move it down. And then you just want to make sure those ends are nice and straight so that your pocket is straight. Okay. So that is what it should look like. And so you have those tabs going on the inside that actually form your sides for your pocket box. That's what I'm going to call it. I'm going to call it a pocket box. And you can, again, just keep adjusting. So you have this 1/4 inch here. So you have a 1/4 inch depth to this pocket to put lots of photos. And when I trimmed up this piece, just to let you know how wide it is 4 3/8 by 4.5 ish. So that's plenty enough room to put like 4 by 6 excuse me, 4 by 6 photos and tags right on the inside here. I always like to burnish my edges. I don't like to look at white edges. So I'm going to use some Distress ink in walnut stain. And I am going to just go over these edges so that they're not white. And it just hides that white core of the paper. And it gives a little depth to your cutout as well. Okay, so that is the first pocket that we're going to have. So I'm going to set this aside and move on to the next one after I do a little distressing on the sides of this part of it. So I'm going to set this aside, let that dry, and move on to the next element. So the next one we're going to do is this one right here. And this is such a beautiful design. Let me go ahead and distress the edges right now. Get that out of the way. Again, I'm not really going into the graphic part of this paper because it's so pretty. I don't want to do that. I just want to not see that white core of the paper. And I'm doing that on the reverse as well. It just adds, again, a little bit of depth, and it does that magic of hiding that white core. For this one, I have chosen to use this cut apart. Nope, wrong one. Let's see, which one? Oh, this one's going to be my flip pockets. This is going to be my flip one. I actually am going to not do this one next. I'm going to do this one next. I'll do the flip pocket one last. It's a little bit more steps. I'm going to do this one next. So I am going to go ahead and get those edges cleaned up real quick. You can do the same thing if you're working on it while you're watching me. Let me take a second here to do. Okay, that is done. So this is what I'm going to do, and I think this is the one that matches it. Yes. And I'm going to do the same only on this side because you're not going to see the other side. Okay, for this one, I do believe I have a pre-cut strip that we're going to use. Let me just find it in my pile. I believe it's this, not this one. I had these all organized and then I lost where they were. I don't think I am doing a slip for this one. I think I'm laying this straight down. This one's just going to be a straight on pocket. Yeah, I think that's what I did. So I'm just going to apply adhesive all around here. This is just like a follow Pamela as she goes on her how am I going to design my project. So you get to see what my thought process is as I go through it. So I'm just going to put adhesive all the way around. This is going to become a pocket as well. So let me go ahead and do that. And you're just going to need just a little bit of adhesive, a tiny, tiny bit on 3 sides of the piece. And I'll show you how I place the adhesive right now. So you see where I have it just a little bit because I want to make sure I have a big enough pocket for whatever I'm going to put. And then I'm lining it up with the edge of my main piece. Okay, just making sure I'm nice and straight on the edge of my main piece. And then I'm just going to burnish that so that that adhesive makes good contact. This makes a really deep pocket, so lots of memorabilia, really super simple pocket. I'm going to let that one dry, set that one aside and let it dry. And then let me talk about some of my elements here. So I took and scored, I folded this in half, I scored it so that it'll increased it, made sure it's nice and burnished. I'm going to go ahead and distress the edges and then I'm going to mat the inside. Hopefully I'm doing this on camera for you guys. Yeah, get rid of all of that white core. And then I'm going to do the inside as well. And down the center. And then I made 2 little mats to go on here. And these are 2 3/4 by 3 3/4. 2 3/4 by 3 3/4 is what I cut these. And then I think I want to distress these as well. I just think it just really adds a little bit of depth and dimension to your element. Okay, and these are going to sit right in here. So once again, you can take and use whatever adhesive you want to use. I'm using liquid. You just want to be careful you don't put too much because it'll spread out. The liquid glue is going to spread out. And then you want to make sure that you are even on your sides as much as possible. And you want to burnish that down really good. Really well. Burnish that down. Let me go ahead and do the other piece. Apply the adhesive to it. And line it up as evenly as possible with the other one and your sides. And that becomes a little booklet insert that we can use. And there may be some other embellishments that I'll use for this later, but this is already set and ready to go, so I'm going to set it aside. I'm also going to do the same thing with this element where it's a portrait or landscape version of the same thing I just did with the other cut aparts. All the way around. And then I like to do that center part as well on the inside. And I can speed up this whole process by doing two sides at the same time. Outer side as well. And then my two mats I'm going to go ahead and do. Just distress those a little bit. And it really does, if you can see that white core there, it really does take away that white core when you distress your ends of your paper. All right, we're gonna apply some glue onto our mats and then we're gonna lay those down. I'm gonna do that right now. Not too much, but you want to make sure that your edges have glue. And then you're gonna just line this up as tight as possible and as centered as possible. This one down too, lining it up, with your other one, and then your edges, making sure that you get a little bit more even. Get that nice. Stuck down here. You can use your bone folder if you want to. And I might again do a little bit more to this, but this is prepped and ready to go. And then what am I doing for this one? So for the next large element, this one right here, I'm going to be making a little flip up two double-sided photo mat or pockets. And for these, I cut them 4 1/4 by 6 1/2, and I scored it at 1/4 on the first one. So the first one I scored at 1/4. I'm going to go ahead and distress all of my edges, and then I am going to start matting each side of these pieces. So I am going to speed the video up because you don't need to really see that, and then I'll talk about well, before I do that, so these are let's see, these are 4 1/4 by 6 1/2. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of these mats are cut at 4 by 6 1/4. 4 are cut 4 by 6 1/4, and then I use the remaining pieces of the 12 by 12 sheet that I had, and I cut these down so that they measure 4 by 5 3/4. So 2 cut by 4 and 5 3/4, and then for this little piece, because I like to use as much of my scraps as possible, I cut 2 at 3 1/4 by 4. So 2 at 3 1/4 by 4, and I scored them 1/4. Each of these are scored because then that makes up the rest of my mats, and I get 2 pockets out of it as well. So I'm going to go ahead and speed up the video and get these matted and ready to go to put onto the back side of this piece right here.